Evening, everybody. We just want to cover a few things tonight. We just coming into new. I think as a body of Christ, and this I see all over the place on Facebook and things like that, where people are starting to discuss what faith is. Some people are actually ditching faith and saying, it's got nothing to do with us anymore. It's just a work. And and there's certain debates that are going on. So I really wanted to cover tonight really what faith is. In the past, I've covered what it means by the just shall live by faith, and it's another YouTube video we've done, which really means that those who have been made righteous by God shall live by His faithfulness towards them. Right? But but people say, well, what about our faith? Well, that's what I'm going to cover tonight. What is our faith? What is it for? Right? So, really, I'm going to cover in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, it says, we walk by faith and not by sight. Okay. Now, the other time when Paul talks about walking, he talks about walking in the spirit or walking in the flesh. So, really, what he's saying is that when we walk by faith, we're walking in the spirit. And the context of all that, what he was saying was that walking in the Spirit is focusing upon the finished work of the cross, that everything has been done. And really, if we get into 2 Corinthians, and then starting in chapter 4, in verse 16, it says, for which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. Outward man being the flesh, inward man being a spirit. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far exceedingly eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Okay? So, our righteousness is eternal, our flesh is temporal. This flesh will be gone when we die or raptured. Okay? Flesh is gone. And then he goes on to say what that means. In the beginning of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, it says, for we know that if our earthly house, this tabernacle, is dissolved, we have a building from God. So our body, when we die or raptured, we're going to have our spiritual body, right, which is a building from God. Not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desire to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. Okay, and he goes on. So he's what Paul's saying is that we're going to get rid of this body. We're going to get a heavenly building. Right? And in the past, I've had teachings going on about God's got these buildings for us and all that. There's no buildings for us in heaven. What we've got is our new body, the same body Jesus had when he was resurrected. Okay, it doesn't have the sin nature that Adam passed on down to us. It doesn't have that sin nature. I think I've said this before. Jesus found there was no sin found in Jesus. Why? Because he wasn't born of a man; he was born of a woman. The sin nature is passed down through the man. So, because Adam sinned, he chose to make a decision. Eve was deceived. Okay, that's why the sin nature comes down through mankind. So while we live in this earthly body, okay, we fight that sin nature. And if you look at the YouTube video I've done before about who is your devil, it goes into this deeply. But what it is, our flesh, right? Our flesh wants to do things its own way. It wants to go about and make sure that it's done it. It doesn't want to rely on something else. It wants to do the job itself. But walking in the Spirit is and what Mark's been saying, is fully reliant upon what God has done. Okay? So remember, when Jesus was tempted, he wasn't tempted with physical things. He was tempted about relying upon self. Rely upon self to turn stones into bread to eat. And the other things that he was tempted with. But he countered back with God's faithfulness towards the temptation. And so really, Paul is saying the same thing in this verse, that our faith is to keep our heart established in God's goodness, so we're not reliant upon our flesh to do things for ourselves. And look, this is going to be controversial. This is going to slap a lot of people in the face. But most people, when they say they're operating in faith, they're not. They're operating in the flesh, right? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, what do you do? Okay, we go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you got cancer, right? You only got 3 months to live. So they start believing in God for their healing and start reminding God of this and that. But that's not what faith's for. Faith is not about getting results or moving God. Faith is about, Paul's right here, it's about establishing your heart in God's faith, God's goodness towards you. So what we do, we get faith established now by getting God's goodness established in our heart. And then what will happen, these things won't come up. You won't get diagnosed. You know, you won't get these sicknesses and that diagnosed with you, because that healing has already been released. You know, if you're in a situation where you're short with money for a certain period of time or in that month, well, remember what we said in the past. You are in a situation you are because of what you believe at a heart level. Not because the devil's robbing from you, and not because God hasn't given you everything. God has given us everything. So what happens, people go, oh, I'm starting to get into faith and believe God. But they're not actually believing God. What they're doing, they're relying on their confession and their ability to manipulate or remind God of their situation. That's not faith. That's the flesh, because you're trying to get the result done, okay, out of that. Really, what we use the precedent, you know, what we call what we use in faith, confessing with the mouth, believing in the heart level. Those things are still relevant. But they're not relevant for the benefits of our righteousness. They're relevant for us being righteous. So we walk by faith, not by sight. Paul's telling us exactly what it is. It's about putting down the things which are seen, which is the flesh, and relying on things that are eternal, which is the truth of what we have at a spiritual level. He even goes on to say that a reward is getting rid of this body, because we're going to appear on the judgment seat of Christ, the bema seat, the reward seat. It's to get our new body, right? It's not because I've been in ministry 20 years or this or that, I've done this, done that. You know, everyone's going to get the same reward. It's a new body, right? There's no favourites, someone's done a better job than the other, because agape love doesn't expect anything. You know, remember what we said that before? So we walk by faith to keep our heart established on the things which are not seen, which is our righteousness and the goodness and the love of God. Because they're from the Spirit, they are eternal, and that's what faith is for. So the things of faith, like speaking, believing at a heart level, is not about the benefits of our righteousness, but us being righteous. Okay? Most people, everyone, have a look at when you get into faith. What are you doing? Are you reminding God about your healing? Reminding God about His provision? You're hoping that's going to come through? That's not faith, right? It's not faith. Faith is believing at a heart level that God has got your back, that you can fully trust in everything. And it doesn't matter what happens. As Mark said, you're afloat in that sea of grace. You're not in control. God's in control. Remember what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount? He said, your Father knows what you need, that you need these things. He knows that you need money. He knows that you need healing. He knows that you need these things. He has provided them all for you. Why aren't they flowing? Because you're not relying upon Him and the finished work and His faithfulness towards you. You're relying upon your efforts to get the job done by your confessions and your believing and what you're speaking out of your mouth. Right? But doesn't it say that Jesus said that whatever we say, if we believe at a heart level, whatever we say we'll have? But it's understanding what that means. You know, in the Greek, when it says that if you believe what you say, you'll have whatever you say, means this: that if you believe what you already have and you say that, you'll have it. What do you believe? Right? So what do I have? I have righteousness. I have God's love. That's what I speak out. And in Mark 11:23, when it talks about the mountain, if you look it up what that word is, they're not sure if it is a mountain. They say mountain, but what it means, it's a description of a bird lifting up and flying away. It's something that's elevated. So what is that? So there's things in your heart that are elevated above the knowledge of God's faithfulness towards you. That's what your faith is for, to get rid of that mountain so your heart can be established in God's faithfulness towards you. So you can put down your flesh, which wants to do its own thing, and you can rely on God's faithfulness. And then everything will just flow. Provision, healing, everything from like that. Okay? That's what faith is for. Faith is about putting our flesh down and keeping our heart established in God's faithfulness towards us. Alright? So, this might be, if you've got any questions, look up the Southern Cross Grace Fellowship page, send us an email, and we'll ask you some questions. But trust in God's faithfulness. That's what it's for. Thank you.